Hey YouTubers, I wanted to create this video in order to maybe bring to light some misconceptions on running nitro engines. I know there's a lot of those out there that are always making fun of nitro. You know, they're pretty strict electric guys, you know. Maybe once that they had tried to run a nitro and thought that they knew what they were doing or didn't and didn't have luck with it the way they thought and gave it up to run something completely easy, which is electric, um, but seem to just totally be ignorant or not even think of the intricacies of these are just toy engines. I mean, all in all, they are just toy engines. They're very simply made. They are their own fuel pumps, so they have to have airtight functionality in order to run properly. Um, they are just made of aluminum, brass, and chrome, so when they get hot, the metals expand. I have 20 years experience in running nitro engines, and I have complete confidence to be able to say that once these blocks, no matter if it's a 10th scale engine to a large helicopter size .42 engine, when they hit 315 to 320 degrees Fahrenheit, the block actually becomes a little bit expanded to the point where if the block was taken apart all the way down to where it's just the bearings and the block, the bearings just fall out, like not even with any resistance. So, with it being put together, reaching that temperature, there is gappage between where the bearings set in, the one that is in the front here and inside as well. But mainly what counts is the one that's in the front because that one has to deal with the sealing off of air getting into the engine. The only place you want air getting into the engine is through the regulated carburetor slide or rotary if you have one of those. Anyways, so if there is any bit of an air leak anywhere that unregulated air gets into the cylinder chamber, then it's not going to run properly. It'll hang high idle or run lean, no matter how fat you set the fuel settings. So the whole misconception that I'm trying to get to is the fact that people start to experience that the engine doesn't run properly and they immediately go to changing the needle settings. They think, oh, I got to, you know, and that is completely and utterly, totally wrong. Unless you have moved to a completely different altitude or you haven't ran the vehicle since a completely different um, weather than, you know, like if you ran it in the summer and you're trying to run it again in the wintertime, then you don't ever have to touch the needles. I mean, honest to God. I mean, if you change the fuels, the, the the fuel you run, if you change the nitro percentage, then yeah, you have to change the needles a little bit. But if you haven't done any of that, if you haven't changed the fuel percentage that you run, like from 30 to 20 or up or down, whatever, or move to a whole different altitude and trying to run the vehicle, you don't need to mess with the needles because when I break in a brand new engine, I break it in properly with a couple of bump box tanks, and then I start running it around back and forth slowly. And then I get it out on the track and I start rolling the jumps. And then I start getting, as I get to a full gallon through the engine, actually leaning the top and bottom a little bit. And that's only after the engine is up to temp, which is normally around 245 to 260. That is like the Goldilocks zone for these engines. Anyway, um, so people go to messing with the needles like as soon as they start the car up. It's not even hot yet unless you've preheated the engine with a heat gun or a head heater. You don't want to touch the needles until the engine is up to temp. Okay, and then it'll make a difference. So And then even when you do mess with the needle a little bit, take it out for a couple laps and see how it behaves. You got to put it out into its environment, jumping jumps or however you run the vehicle. If you run it on the track or if you bash with it out in the field, you're going to have different needle settings for those environments. But once you get them set, you shouldn't have to mess with them. That's my point. So when you experience that the engine is not running properly, doesn't want to idle, then you need to not look at the needle settings. You need to look at other things like residue from dust and dirt caked up around on the carburetor or the crankcase itself. That will show you signs of where leaks are coming from. Like even where the exhaust header and pipe meet, you'll see dust in a spray fashion. It's because it's leaking from out of here and causing the oil that's not being burnt by the engine to have dirt and dust stick to it. So there are signs that tell you that there is something wrong, and it's not just the needle settings. And when you start messing with the needle settings thinking that's what it is, then you're wearing out those O-rings that are around those screws that you're screwing in and out trying to figure out why that the engine isn't running right. So, people just get these big misconceptions about nitros or just junk, and they don't. It's how you treat them too. Every time you race or run these, you should go home, take it off the vehicle, clean it, take the flywheel off, clean the dirt off of the front bearing, because the more dirt that gets packed onto that front bearing where the seal is, whether it be metal or rubber, the dirt's going to get pushed through, and then you're going to get silt and dirt and debris inside the engine, which then scars everything, ruins bearings, and makes scratches happen on the piston and sleeve. And you're not going to get any compression. You're going to get blow by. It's not going to run. You're going to still be messing with the needles and not get anywhere and get frustrated and throw it away. So there you go. That is the God's honest truth of what always happens to people that don't understand or don't take the time to learn and realize what's really going on. And it's just a basic fact that these things are their own fuel pump. That's why they have a pressure line running to the tank, is so that the output pressure helps push fuel to the engine. The cylinder, when it's coming up, it is pulling fuel because it's making a vacuum inside the crankcase. The fuel comes in, goes through the fluted crankshaft, and is inside the bottom area of the crankcase underneath the piston sleeve. And as it's coming up, it's sucking the atomized fuel mixture up into that chamber. And when it's coming down, then it's opening the ports, which is drawing in that fuel mixture, and the sonic revibration from the pipe is actually keeping that fuel mixture from escaping along with because all ports are open when it's on its downstroke. So it actually is able to keep the next amount of fuel coming in directed into the combustion chamber, and then when it's coming back up, it's a cycle. So when these things have a leak anywhere, a loose head, always check your head button, your head bolts after running. They can vibrate loose. These things are ridiculous. They run up to 40 something thousand RPMs sometimes. So yeah, they're going to shake themselves loose. Some of these screws you don't use Loctite, you just have to tighten them down. Anyway, so I hope that someone out there has found some of this info that I've come off with in the past almost 9 minutes somewhat useful and enlightening, because I can't get any more basic on what these misconceptions are. And it's just so stupid and ridiculous, in my opinion, that people have such hatred, or not hatred, but just they're just one-sided. They just don't, yeah, they're messy and whatever, but like I said, it's how you take care of them. It's how you run them. So if you race them, if you maintenance them properly, if you clean them, then, that's all part of it. Same thing goes with electric. I mean, you have to still take those apart. They get dirt in them. There's maintenance that goes along with those as well. I mean, I actually have more problems when it comes to running my electric buggy than I do with my nitro. Swear to God. And then when I have a problem with my nitro, it's something electric, battery lead, or some kind of problem with the switch not making So I'm kind of biased that I'm there for a nitro. That's my sideshow. I'll race two classes, but I'm racing for nitro, and then I'll race that as well. If that thing breaks down or whatever, big deal. If this thing breaks down, it's a little bit more of a heartbreak. But what breakdowns I have has nothing to do with how the engine's running, really ever. I mean, it's always been something wrong with the car. Anyways, I'm going on about nothing now, so just wanted to bring that up. And then, so if anybody's actually still watching, so here's what I'm talking about, that dust and dirt, that residue is up on the areas that are leaking. So this engine isn't running right. It's high revving when you get it, up to throttle, and then it's high idling and not settling down very fast. It's not how I have it tuned. There's a leak, so I'm looking at it being the carburetor. So I'm going to swap the entire carburetor out to another one that I know works good, maybe off of that car, and then run it again. Get it up to temp, about, run almost a half a tank through it and see if it behaves or not. If it still behaves improperly, then I'm going to look at maybe it being another problem. So that's how I handle it. Anyways, I hope this has been helpful to somebody. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment and subscribe. Thanks.